Nobody walks into Sam's Club to buy a watch. You go for the bulk paper towels, the rotisserie chicken, the tires. And on the way to the checkout, there's a glass case in the jewelry section that almost everybody walks straight past without slowing down. That case has an automatic dive watch in it for under $300. It has a solar watch that will never need a battery for $169. And it has a mechanical watch, a real one, with a rotor that winds itself off your wrist for $98. These are 7 watches sitting in that case right now that almost nobody notices, and every one of them is doing something that costs a great deal more everywhere else. One quick note before we start. Every price in this video came off the Sam's Club site, and Sam's Club says outright that prices can differ between the club and online. So treat these as what's listed, and check your own club. Let's start at number 7. 7. Invicta Pro Diver, 48 minute, $80. Let's deal with the elephant first. Invicta gets mocked more than any brand in watches. The cases are enormous, the branding is loud, and the marketing has always been a bit much. If you post one in a collector forum, somebody will make a joke within about 4 minutes. Here's what those people don't tell you. The Pro Diver is the single most reviewed watch in Sam's Club's entire men's case. 61 reviews, averaging 4.6, 4 out of 5. That is not a watch people are quietly regretting. That is a watch a lot of people bought, kept, and came back to rate highly. And look at what $80 actually gets you. A stainless steel case, unidirectional rotating bezel, coin edge case sides, a bracelet with real weight to it. Yes, the design is a submariner homage. Everybody knows it. Invicta has never pretended otherwise. But here's the thing about homages at this price. You are not fooling anyone, and you are not trying to. You are buying the shape, the proportions, and the presence of a design that costs $10,000 for $80. The 48mm size is the real thing to watch out for. That is genuinely large, and on a smaller wrist, it will look like a wall clock. Try it on in the club before you commit. But at $80, with 61 people averaging 4.6, this is the cheapest way to find out whether you actually like wearing a dive watch, before you spend real money finding out you don't. And if a quartz diver at $80 gets your attention, the next one has a mechanical movement for $18 more. 6. Invicta Pro Diver Automatic, 44 minute, $90. Read the price and the word automatic in the same sentence one more time, because most people assume it's a mistake. $98. Automatic movement. That means no battery. Ever. The watch is powered by a weighted rotor inside the case that spins as your arm moves, winding a mainspring. It is the same fundamental mechanism as a watch costing $5,000. The same idea, executed at a different level of finishing. And that distinction is what nobody explains properly. An expensive automatic gives you better finishing, tighter tolerances, and a movement somebody decorated by hand. It does not give you a fundamentally different kind of timekeeping. The mechanism is doing the same job. Here's what you can actually see for free. Hold it up and watch the second hand. It does not tick once per second like a quartz watch. It sweeps continuously, because a mechanical movement beats several times per second, and the hand follows that rhythm without stopping. Anyone who has ever put a real automatic on their wrist for the first time and watched that sweep remembers it. And you are getting that experience for $98 at a warehouse club in the two-tone finish that usually costs extra. 44mm, which is more wearable than the 48 above it. Now be honest about the trade. 8 reviews, averaging 4.13, respectable, but a smaller sample than the quartz version, and mechanical movements at this price vary more unit to unit than quartz ever does. Accuracy will not be great. That is not what you're buying. You are buying an entire category of watchmaking for under $100. The next one costs $1 more and comes as 2 watches. 5. Timex Ironman Adrenaline Ana-Digi set, $99. This is the one most likely to get skipped entirely, because it looks like a sports watch from a pharmacy, and that is exactly why it's here. Timex Ironman is, by volume, one of the most successful sports watch lines ever made. Not one of the most respected, one of the most sold. It has been strapped to runners, swimmers, and triathletes since the 80s in genuinely enormous numbers, because it does the thing it was built for and does not break. That is not marketing. That is a line that survived 4 decades of competition from every direction, including smartwatches, because a certain kind of buyer just wants a timer, a light, and a watch that will not die. And this is a set. You're getting more than one piece for $99, which is where the maths gets awkward for everything else on the shelf. The Ana-Digi format is worth understanding too. Analog hands for reading the time at a glance. Digital display underneath for everything else. Timer, alarm, date. It is genuinely the most practical layout for anyone who actually uses the functions. And it went out of fashion for about 15 years purely on aesthetics before coming back. 2 reviews on the site, averaging 3 out of 5. Small sample, and I'm going to be straight with you. That is the weakest rating in this video. Read the reviews yourself before you buy. But the Ironman line itself has 40 years of evidence behind it that a 2-review sample cannot overturn. And Timex has been making watches since the 1850s. They survived the quartz crisis by making inexpensive quartz watches while Swiss brands were closing. They know how to build cheap and durable, because that is the entire company. The next watch never needs a battery, and it never will. 4. Citizen EcoDrive Carson, 42mm. $169. Now we get to the one that changes the arithmetic of owning a watch at all. EcoDrive is Citizen's solar movement. There is a thin film cell under the dial that converts any light, daylight, a lamp, the light in the club you're standing in, into stored charge. Fully charged, it runs for months in complete darkness. There is no battery to replace. Ever. Not in 3 years. Not in 10. And that matters more than the spec sheet suggests, because battery replacement is what kills most watches' actual use. The cell dies. You don't get around to it. The watch sits in a drawer, and eventually you forget you own it. Remove that friction, and the watch stays in rotation for decades. Citizen has been developing EcoDrive since the 70s. This is not a novelty feature bolted on. It is roughly 50 years of refinement of the same core technology, from a company with the industrial capacity to build the whole thing in-house. The Carson is the dress version. 42mm, stainless bracelet, clean dial, nothing shouting. It is the watch you wear to something that matters and never think about again. $169. Compare that to a fashion brand quartz watch at the same money. You get a name on the dial, a battery that dies in 2 years, and a design tied to a specific season. Here you get a movement Citizen engineered, a case that doesn't date, and no maintenance for the life of the watch. 2 reviews, both 5 stars. Tiny sample. But EcoDrive as a technology has decades of track record behind it, and that is what you're actually betting on. The next one is the same technology, rated for 200 meters underwater. 3. Citizen. EcoDrive Promaster. Dive Orca. 46 meter. 219. Promaster is not Citizen's fashion line. It is their professional line. The one built for diving, aviation, and land use, with the specifications to back it. Take the previous watch's solar movement, put it in a proper dive case, and you get something that solves a problem divers have had forever. Think about what a dive watch is for. It is a backup timing device for a person underwater whose life depends on knowing how long they have been down. Now think about a battery-powered dive watch and the specific moment the battery dies. A solar dive watch does not have that failure mode. It charges from ambient light and keeps charging every time it sees daylight. For a tool watch, that is not a convenience feature. It is the removal of the single most likely way for the watch to let you down. 46mm, which is large, and it is meant to be. Legibility underwater is the whole point. $219. The comparison that makes this uncomfortable for everyone else. A Swiss dive watch with equivalent water resistance and a mechanical movement starts around $1,000 and needs servicing every few years at a few hundred a time. This asks nothing of you, forever, for $219. One review on the site, 5 stars, thin data. But the Promaster line is decades old and has an established reputation that a single listing cannot summarize. The next one comes from a company that once put a watch on the moon. 2. Bulova Classic, 2-tone stainless steel. $249. Bulova is the name on this list with the most history that almost nobody knows about. The company was founded in New York in the 1870s. In the 1960s, Bulova developed the Accutron, a tuning fork movement that was genuinely revolutionary, accurate to within seconds a month at a time when that was extraordinary, and used in American space program equipment. And a Bulova chronograph went to the moon's surface on Apollo 15, worn on the wrist of an astronaut whose issued watch had a problem. That watch later sold at auction for over $1 million. That is the company selling you a watch for $249 in a warehouse club. What you're getting for the money is a classic 2-tone stainless dress watch, the steel and gold combination that reads as formal from across a room, on a bracelet, with the proportions of something considerably more expensive. Now, the 2-tone question, because it's fair to raise it. 2-tone went out of fashion for about 15 years and has come back hard in the last few. At $249, you are not making an investment bet on it either way. You are buying a look that is currently working from a company with 150 years behind the name. One review, 5 stars. Same caveat as the others. Thin listing data on a brand with very deep history. And the number one watch in this case has a mechanical movement, a professional dive rating, and still comes in under $300. 1. Citizen Automatic Promaster Dive C Auto. Century, $299. $299. Automatic movement, Promaster dive case, stainless bracelet, green dial. Let me lay out why this is the best value in the entire case. And it comes down to one thing most buyers never check. Who made the movement? Citizen builds their own. They are not buying a Swiss caliber and putting their name on the dial. And they are not buying a generic Chinese movement either. Citizen owns Miyota, which is one of the largest movement manufacturers in the world and supplies a very large share of the watch industry, including brands that charge 4 figures and never mention where the engine came from. So at $299, you are buying from a company that manufactures the most expensive component in the watch, in-house, at scale. Now the mechanical dive watch part. A self-winding automatic in a proper dive case is one of the oldest and most respected formats in watchmaking, and it is normally where the price climbs fast. A Swiss equivalent starts around $1,000 and goes up steeply from there. And the green dial matters more than it sounds. Green has been the dominant color in dive watches for the last several years, driven by a handful of very expensive models that are effectively impossible to buy at retail. This gives you that look at a price you can walk in and pay today. Now the honest part, because this listing has the most data on it, and it is not perfect. 7 reviews, averaging 3.86 out of 5. That is the largest sample of the higher priced watches here, and it is not a clean sweep of 5s. Read those reviews before you buy. Mechanical movements vary unit to unit far more than quartz, and at this price, you should go in expecting a watch that keeps decent time rather than excellent time. But the package, in-house automatic professional dive line, under $300, does not exist anywhere else at this money. Look at what these 7 have in common, because it isn't the brands. Not one of them is cheap because a corner got cut where it matters. They are cheap because a warehouse club buys in volume, takes a thin margin, and does not spend anything on the jewelry store experience. No boutique, no display theater, no salesperson explaining why you need it. You get the watch and none of the ceremony. And the ceremony is most of what you're paying for everywhere else. I've put the direct link to every model in this video, along with the price I found, in the description below, so you can check them yourself rather than take my word for any of it. And check them you should, because Sam's Club states plainly that prices can differ between the club and online, and warehouse stock moves fast. What's listed today may not be there next week. Which of these would you actually wear? Tell me in the comments. And if you've owned any of them, I especially want to hear how it held up. If this was useful, hit subscribe. There's a video on the channel about the expensive watches that dealers genuinely cannot sell, and it's the exact opposite of this one.